This little rat is dying in her own piss, and then I'll kill you.
Bonhart's cousin, Dominic Bombatis Pavlo.
I'm too sensitive at the sight and make use of those weird places.
A unicorn. It's the day before the equinox in a village called Unicorn when Ciri meets 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 and Ryans. Bonhart yanked her off of 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓶 and dragged her inside the house. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 was demanding an answer from Bonhart on why he didn't bring Ciri to him or kill her, whereas Ryans was hoping to take Ciri back to 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓶 alive. Bonhart handed her over to one of 𝓘𝓮𝓬's men, Silliphant, to take her outside and guard her as they discussed their plans. Since it was the equinox, the other guards, including Silliphant, wanted to go to the festival to celebrate. He handed Ciri over to 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 and Jooleya. They tied her up to the main square of the village. Bonhart goes on to explain how he found out who Ciri really was.
At first she wouldn't talk, although I asked. I hit her hands and feet with a whip, but I didn't want to cut her. But, as luck would have it, a barber surgeon was in town, with instruments for extracting teeth. I tied her to a chair.
𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 gulped loudly. Ryan smiled cruelly.
She told me everything, as soon as she saw the dental pliers and blades.
Ryans pointed out that she's the princess of 𝓑𝓮𝓬, the heir to the throne and the bride-to-be for Emperor Emir.
Mr. 𝓘𝓮𝓬 told me to kill her, several times in fact. Killed on the spot without mercy. But why, 𝓘𝓮𝓬? To kill the queen and the future wife to your beloved emperor?
Bonhart glared at 𝓘𝓮𝓬, but he never looked down.
So what does that mean for me? I had to give up my plans for the Witcher girl and princess. I brought this whole mess here to you, to talk, to make an agreement. Because this is too much for one Bonhart.
𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 chimed in from the Xenovox from the game, that it was in Ryan's pocket.
A very good decision, Mr. Bonhart. What you've captured is something too big for the both of you. Thankfully, you still have me.
And why do you need her, 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯?
Bonhart asked.
I only need her placenta. When I extract it from her, you can have the rest.
Come, we didn't gather here for a party, but to talk business. I'm here to sell her. What is your offer, Sir Sorcerer?
I am willing to pay 2,000 florins. That will suffice for the retirement, porch, vodka, and harlots, if you keep a sensible moderation. And I'll let you be present during what I do to the girl. You'll be able to watch. I know you prefer the pleasure above all else.
Bonhart's eyes flashed with white flame, but remained calm. The bounty hunter smiled.
Agreed, mage, sir. You've touched my heart with that vodka and harlots. Let's strike a deal. But I'd also be interested in that observation you suggested too. I'd prefer, admittedly, to watch her expire in the arena. But I'd also be glad to look at your knife work. Throw it in as a bonus.
Done.
Unknown to Bonhart, 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, Ryans, and 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓁 is a spy working for Lord Darux and the Empire. Joanna Selborn, being a psionic, overheard 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓶 thoughts and found out he was a spy. When she told 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓁 she wouldn't say anything, she also refused to help them and approached Ciri to try and understand why there was so much fuss over this one teenager. Jooleya probed Ciri's mind, but her power easily pushed the 𝓑𝓾𝓂 out, knocking Jooleya off her feet and causing a massive nosebleed in the process. When Jooleya probed her, her powers that she relinquished back in the Korok Desert had awoken. This was her chance to escape. Ciri quickly used her powers and killed one of the guards. In the confusion, 𝓜𝓮 helped free Ciri, and she was quickly on 𝓘𝓵's saddle. As she was riding off, 𝓜𝓮 knocked down 𝓘𝓮 and threw himself from his saddle onto Bonhart, holding him to the ground. As Ciri managed to dodge and slash at the other bodyguards, Bonhart managed to jump to his feet. He pushed 𝓜𝓮 away with the pommel of his sword and slashed him diagonally across the chest. Then he raced after Ciri. 𝓜𝓮 slit open and, spurting blood, managed to catch him by his legs and only released him when he was skewered into the sand by the point of his sword. But those few seconds of delay were enough. Ciri spurred 𝓘𝓵 on. 𝓘𝓮 came up stealthily from the left and threw an Orion. Ciri swayed in the saddle, and a fountain of blood erupted from her face. She almost fell, but straightened up and held onto 𝓘𝓵's neck. The mare rushed straight towards the gates, leaping 7 feet over. When the gates finally opened, Bonhart and Boris Munn, a tracker, were galloping after her. They lost the mare after 3 miles. Ciri disappeared. She was found near death by Visigoda of Corbo, who hid and healed her at his cottage in the 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰 swamps. She stayed with Visigoda until shortly after 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓰, when she set off to find the Swallow's Tower, believing to be the twin tower to 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰. She wanted to return back to the Isle of 𝓘𝓮𝓬. Before she left, though, she brought along some new clothes that belonged to Visigoda's daughter. One item in particular were ice skates. Ciri asked a local ice fisherman where 𝓘𝓵𝓬𝓪𝓯 Lake was and proceeded west. An hour later, 14 pursuers galloped along on her trail. They had been tracking her for 3 months, and only now did they find her. The trail leads to the lake.
Dismount. The ice is too thin,
Bonhart stated, his eyes fixed on the fog covering the lake.
There's no sense risking it. We catch up to her on foot. She's also dismounted.
They cautiously proceeded onto the ice and into the thick fog, barely able to see 20 paces in front of them.
Fan out into a line. I'm going back for my horse.
As they proceeded further into the fog, Ciri's footsteps stopped 10 paces in front of them. They could hear a scraping sound on the ice. Ciri put on Visigoda's skates and began hunting her pursuers. Bonhart was galloping on the edge of the shore. He knew Ciri was in the fog. He could feel it. He found the edge of the lake. The fog curtain suddenly ripped and blew away. He looked up and saw her. She was right in front of him, sitting on her black mare. He thought,
Sorceress. She communicates with the beast. She sent it to the end of the lake and ordered it to wait for her. But that won't help her. I have to kill her. The devil takes 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓰. I have to kill her. First, I'll make her beg for her life. And then I'll kill her.
He yelled and went into a gallop, but then realized that he lost. Ciri misled him. He had run straight onto thin ice. Bonhart tugged at the reins, but only drove his horse further into the ice. Ciri turned and galloped towards the end of the lake. As she got closer, she saw the tower wasn't there. There wasn't even ruins of a tower. Just nothing. Bonhart yelled triumphantly,
That's your tower. That's your salvation. A pile of stones.
Ciri raised both hands up to the sky as to curse the heavens for what had befallen her.
I told you that you are mine, that I'll do what I want with you, that no one will stop me from doing it. Not people, not gods, not devils, not demons, or enchanted towers. You're mine, Witcher girl.
The fog suddenly swirled and, appearing between him and Ciri, stood a white unicorn, dancing and rearing up, shielding Ciri. It was Little Horse.
Don't try tricks like that on me. You won't frighten me with sorcery. I'll catch you, Ciri. I'll kill you this time, Witcher girl. You're mine.
The mist took forms and figures appeared. It was the Wild Hunt. Yay! Surprisingly, they didn't frighten him. He overcame the horror and didn't fall into panic. But his horse was less courageous. The horse reared up and the ice broke under them. As they were sinking, he managed to kick off from his horse and save himself. He goes out into the icy lake in time to see Ciri walk through towards the rail and disappear. Let's fast travel to Lady of the Lake book, specifically at 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 Castle. Ciri traveled to 𝓘𝓮𝓬 Castle to give herself to 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 in exchange for Yennefer's freedom. However, when she walked into the throne room, her stomach clenched into a fist and twisted. Bonhart was on her in 3 steps. With both hands, he grabbed her and lifted her off the ground, bringing his face closer into his pale, fishy eyes.
Hell must be indeed dreadful if you've chosen me.
Ciri didn't reply.
Or maybe hell didn't want you, you little beast. Perhaps that devilish tower spit you out in disgust after tasting your venom.
He pulled her closer. She turned away from him in disgust.
You're afraid. You're right to be afraid. It's the end of your road. You won't escape from here. Here in this castle, I'll bleed you dry.
He gurgled. 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 had Ciri locked up and her sword taken away. She managed to escape when Geralt and his Hansa showed up to 𝓘𝓮𝓬 Castle. As she was searching for Yennefer, Bonhart found her. He emerged from the shadows and hit her in the face with his fist. She stumbled, and he jumped on her like a hawk. He grabbed her by the throat and pushed her against the wall with his forearm.
I would not have found you if you weren't calling out. And how wistfully you called. Do you long for me, my little darling?
He dropped her on the floor and threw her sword at her feet.
I would have preferred the arena as a culmination, the final to your fine performances. The Witcher girl versus Leo Bonhart. People would pay to see something like that. Come on, lift the steel and draw it.
She obeyed, but she didn't draw the sword from its sheath. She slung the belt over her shoulder so that the hilt was in reach. Bonhart took a step back.
I thought that my old eyes would be comforted by what 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 was going to do to you. I was wrong. I need to feel how your blood flows down my sword. To hell with vile sorcery and sorcerers, destiny, prophecies, and the fate of the world, defiling elder and younger blood. What does all this divination and witchcraft mean to me? Shit! Nothing can compare with the pleasure.
He didn't finish his sentence. His eyes flashed ominously.
I'll bleed you to death, Witcher girl. And afterwards, before you cool off, we will celebrate. You're mine, and you'll die mine. Draw your weapon.
Ciri felt fear and panicked. She teleported a small jump away, but it was enough to get away from Bonhart. She eventually ran to 𝓘𝓰 and Angevere, fighting off mercenaries. They bolted into the next room and proceeded on towards Geralt and Yennefer. But Bonhart caught up to them. "Run!" Ciri whispered, seeing Bonhart charging down the passage. He's the devil incarnate, but he only wants me. He won't come after you. Run! Help Geralt! 𝓘𝓫 shook his head and prepared himself for the battle ahead, to his death, for his lady. Bonhart stopped.
Aha! Your companions, Witcher girl? Very well. 2 less, 2 more, makes no difference.
Ciri yelled back, "Say goodbye to your life, Bonhart. It's the end of you. You've met your match."
The Witcher? Really? Well, well, the Witcher is younger than I believed. Just look here, boy.
He pulled open his shirt. A cat, a griffin, and a wolf medallion flashed.
If you are truly a Witcher, know that your amulet will soon join my collection. If you're not a Witcher, then you'll be dead before you can blink. It would be wise, therefore, to get out of my way and flee. I want this wench. I have nothing against you.
You talk big, 𝓘𝓫 said calmly. Let's see if your bite is worse than your bark. Angoulême, Ciri, run! That was the last time they saw 𝓘𝓫. He fought hard and bravely against Bonhart, but in the end, he was too slow. Bonhart caught up to Ciri.
You lied to me. The boy didn't have a medallion, but something tells me that someone here is wearing one. Someone like that will be found. Old Leo Bonhart stakes his life on it. I'm sure to find him near that witch, Yennefer. But first things first, Viper. You and me.
When Bonhart threatened both Geralt and Yennefer, she was done running. She drew 𝓼𝓼 and began circling him, going faster and faster. It forced the bounty hunter to rotate on the spot. He muttered,
Last time, that trick wasn't much use to you. Well, can't you learn from your mistakes?
They fought, jumped, twirled, lunged, and parried. Bonhart managed to cut Ciri's shoulder. Hot blood was running down her arm and onto her hand. She retreated. Noticing the blood left behind on the floor,
First blood to me. Who will draw the second blood? My princess.
the hallway ended suddenly in an abyss. Ciri moved onto a horizontal beam and kept her eyes on Bonhart. They fought on the beams, exchanging blows and dodges. Ciri remembered her training at 𝓘𝓵𝓁, specifically the pendulum, and that's what saved her now. He fell onto one knee, but slipped off the timbers and fell into the abyss. He managed to prop himself up onto a pillar. Ciri jumped and landed a few feet away from him, like a cat. She saw his fish eyes widen in fear.
You won. You won, Witcher girl. Pity it wasn't in the arena. It would have been some spectacle.
She didn't reply.
It was I who gave you that sword. Do you remember?
I remember everything.
Surely you won't finish me off, will you? You won't do it. You won't kill a beaten and defenseless man. I know you after all, Ciri. You're too noble.
She looked at him for a long time before she bent down, tore the Witcher medallions from his neck, then turned and walked towards the exit. He lunged at her with a knife, dishonorably and treacherously. He put all his rage and hatred into this one last act. She dodged, turned, and cut Bonhart's throat open. Didn't I tell you, Ciri said coldly, that I remember everything? He fell backwards and squeezed his throat with all his might. But no matter how firmly he held, no matter how hard he struggled, his life slipped between his fingers. Ciri stood over him without a word, but allowed him to see her clearly. She wanted her image to be the last thing he saw before he died. This concludes the miserable tale of 𝓜𝓮 Bonhart, or Bonnie, and Ciri. Tune in next time for 𝓘𝓵𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯. And with that said, good luck on the path. No rats were harmed in the making of this video, except for this gourd pumpkin thing. Stab, stab, slash, slash, stab, jaw, jaw. It's me eating her heart. Haha. That's what I'm gonna do to Ciri next time I see her. Yeah, that's good. Okay, a little more. You know, what's it gonna hurt? You know, I mean, he wasn't the most graceful. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Oh no! There's missile. Oh. With the back of her hand. His hand. Alright. Girl. Worms and wine. What a party.